When we're learning Pirki Avot, we sort of had a break. We learned a few laws of the Holy Temple, and we're going to go back and learn more laws. But let's still make progress in Pirki Avot, because it's a custom of Jews to learn this Pirki Avot, these lessons from the fathers of Judaism between Passover and Rosh Hashanah. So we still have a couple of months before Rosh Hashanah, so let's go. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azaria. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azaria. I don't know if any of you remember Rabbi Eliezer ben Azaria, but he was a big star of the Haggadah of Pesach. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azaria, he was only 17 years, some people say 18 years old, when he was chosen to be the head of the high judicial court. He was chosen because there was an argument between Rabbi Shimon Gamliel and Rabbi Yeshua. In any case, it ended up that he was chosen to be the head of the court, like once a month or something like that. Once every 3 weeks, he would be the head, and Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, he would be for the other 2 weeks. However it is, he was chosen to be a very high place. And he, of course, was tremendously wise. And here's some of the sayings that he had. Ready? Listen to this. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azaria, he passed it down to us. Im ein Torah, ein derech eretz. Im ein derech eretz, ein Torah. If a person doesn't learn Torah, then he can't really be, derech eretz means polite. Act properly, politely. On the other hand, I mean derech eretz, but if a person doesn't want to act politely and doesn't have at least a kind and considerate nature, then ain't Torah, then his Torah won't last. In other words, it's a bad example of a person who learns Torah. Im means derech eretz. I'm sorry. Im ein chachma. If a person has no wisdom, then he can't have fear of God. Can't have fear of God. He's always just going to be an egotist, and he can't see beyond the surface. So he can't have any fear of God. On the other hand, if a person hasn't got any fear of God, then his wisdom is going to take him to bad places. So it's not going to be true wisdom. It's going to be like these philosophers that come to bad conclusions, like that there's no bad and there's no good. If there's no understanding, there's no dot. There's different opinions about what this is, but generally speaking, bina means to understand things. You can learn things, you can be wise, but it could be that you have like insights to things, chachma, that you have insights, wisdom, but you don't really understand it. If somebody asks you to explain something or asks you a question on it, you can't really answer. Right? You just have a deep insight, a feeling. If a person hasn't got this understanding, then ain't that, then he'll never be able to find any reasons for what he's doing. If he asks any question, then his understanding won't be connected to reality. On the other hand, if a person is not dat, means to be connected to reality, then his understanding eventually is going to be lost because it won't be practical to him. If there's no kemach and Torah, if there's no flour, in other words, the bread, there's no Torah. A person who's poor hasn't got what to eat, so he's always going to be worried about his livelihood, about his health, about his very existence. So he can't learn Torah. On the other hand, if there's no Torah, then what is it worth? The bread and the things that he eats, what's it worth? Right? He's living like an animal. He would say anyone who has more wisdom than action. In other words, he doesn't take what he's learned into practical action. Lama udoma, what is he similar to? He's like a tree that has beautiful branches and flowers and leaves, but he hasn't got any roots. Right? He's got a lot of wisdom, but he hasn't got any action. There's nothing, he's not attached to the ground. Going to come a wind, and a wind will uproot the whole thing and lay the whole tree on its side. Like it says in Jeremiah, a person that doesn't do good deeds, he's going to be like a lone tree in a desert. Below Yirakavov Tov, and he won't see when any good comes. V'shechen charerim, and he will dwell like in desolation, the midbar, in the wasteland, Eretz Malech below Teshev, a salted land which is uninhabitable. That's a person who learns Torah, but he doesn't do good deeds. Anyone who has more good deeds, he puts to practice what he learns in the Torah. To what is he similar? To a tree that's got a few branches, the shorsh of Merubin, but he's attached to the ground. Even though the wind in the world comes and blows on it, it won't move it from his place. Like we see, there were Jews went through the Holocaust and they still held on to Judaism. Like it says, like a tree which is planted near water, and he sends forth his one second, just as a yes, excuse me, just one moment. Yuval in this case, it means like a river of water. Yuval in this case means a river of water. The al Yuval to a river, he sends the tree, puts forth its roots, and he's not going to be worried. Lo yirakivo yavo home when it's a hot day, a desolate day. Doesn't care because he's firmly rooted in the ground. Ranan, his branches were always, his leaves will always be, how do you say, fresh and green. And the Yishanas Basoret, and when there's a year of a famine, lo yidag, he won't worry. But lo yamish me'asot peri, and it'll always make fruits. Of course, this is all a metaphor to someone who learns Torah, but he has deeds, he puts it to action. And the good actions that he has, that's what stands him in good stead, because he sees that doing good deeds according to the Torah, that you're not doing it for yourself. You're doing it for the creator of the universe, and that gives you a firm hold in the world. You're not thinking about what's going to happen to me, whether you're understanding that whatever God does is for the good, and you're rooted firmly in making the world a better place. That gives you a firm basis in life, and you're not afraid of all sorts of the difficulties of the times. Have a good day with Mashiach. Now, God willing, we'll see you tomorrow at 8:15 in the morning.